Oh my god, it sounds like the same song. We were poor and poor. In a wee flat in the West End. It was some of the best days of my life. Well, hello everybody and welcome into this Tuesday's Entertainment News. I am Jonathan C. Walsh here to discuss the latest happenings in the world of entertainment. Who'd have funked it? That's kind of what we do here when we live stream. I'm saying entertainment because I've actually headlined the show, an actual stream, with a music topic, which completely bamboozled me when I laid my eyes on it. Coming from a guy who should know better, man who has been involved in some legendary albums, and he's come out and he's made reference to two bands, legendary bands, but I would suggest that one is on another level entirely, and I have asked that in the thumbnail, are Queen more relevant? We'll get into that in a moment. Incidentally, we are now available on Spotify podcasts, so if you like to listen to our stuff in audio, you can go over there and give us a little follow. It's Movie Burner Entertainment, I think. We're under the guise of. Maybe give the episode a little like. We'd appreciate the support. We're here, there, everywhere. See what I did there? A Beatles reference. Yes, it's producer Steve Lillywhite. He's come out, he's made some remarks about Les Beatles. First and foremost, the headline of this article coming in from NME, penned by Anna Gracial Duran, simply says the Beatles never made anything you could play in a stadium. I don't even know where to go with that, really. And as you can see here, I've put it in the graphics as well, the Beatles never made anything for stadiums. It further goes on to say, I would never say anyone is greater than the Beatles, but there's an argument right now that Queen are more relevant today than the Beatles are. Queen, without their enigmatic, charismatic, once-in-a-lifetime frontman, are more relevant today than the Beatles are. The Beatles aren't even a foursome anymore. Two of the members are sadly no longer with us, and they're still a better band, and certainly more relevant than Queen are today. And that's just talking about 2023, 21st century. You go back to the 20th century when they were changing musical compositions and doing things that the great composers like your Mozarts and your Beethovens and your Chopins were doing. When they were changing up chord progressions and actually meddling with the fabric of music itself for the first time in fucking hundreds of years, they were light years ahead of anybody. Light years ahead of their peers. And Queen aren't even the Beatles' peers. Queen became a band in 1970. I would argue Queen were inspired by the Beatles' success, and it was them who influenced them into being a band. Freddie saw John, Paul, George and Ringo, and that's what gave him the desire to go out and be a frontman. And that's the same can be said for Led Zeppelin. It can be said for bands that have came 25, 30 years later. Oasis, Blur, Radiohead. Bands like that, heavily inspired by what John, Paul, George and Ringo did 30 years at that point prior to them being an entity. It's a strange statement all in. It's a strange article all in. I am going to bring the article up. Just going to address the first point though. The Beatles never made anything for stadiums, relevant for stadiums. This guy's clearly not seen what James Paul McCartney is doing at the ripe old age of 80, what is it now, 81? What he's actually accomplishing at that age, 2.5 hour sets at festivals, 100,000 people in the field, touring all over the world, about to do a tour in Australia. I'm sure he'll be selling out massive cricket and Australian rules football stadiums, 50, 60,000 people. When we went to see him, me and Stephen and my sister, in 2010, Hampden Stadium, 50,000 seater stadium, the pitch, sold out, audience, rocked the entire stadium for north of 2 hours, with Beatles and Wings and McCartney solo hits. It's an utterly strange statement to make when you also factor in that the Beatles were the very first band to perform at a fucking stadium in 1965 and then again in 1966 to 55,000 people, record-breaking attendances, record-breaking profits at that time. They were the very first band to perform in a fucking stadium with crummy little Vox amps, hooking it up into the actual stadium's amplification system. No one could hear them because they were crazed, screaming their heads off. It's a strange statement. That was in 1965 and 66. The Beatles were still maturing as individuals, honing their craft, releasing some of the best music we've ever seen. That was still to come, some of it. And they were already playing at stadiums. They get bored with touring. They wanted to become studio musicians. They never toured again properly after that. But if they'd stayed together as long as Queen had done, and obviously the Stones and bands like that, I have no doubt in my mind they'd have been performing to massive stadiums, but they've been performing all of their 10 years worth of hits, and it would have certainly been relevant for a fucking stadium. Believe me. The just back catalogue of incredibly diverse music, rock numbers, pop numbers, folk numbers, sort of transcendental numbers, hallucinogenic shit going on in there, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. We've already seen this with Giles Martin. The Love album that was brought out in the early 2000s was performed to Madison, I think in Madison Square Gardens. Is that not a stadium? I think it is. People loved it. It's a really, really, really bizarre statement coming from a guy who's worked with the likes of U2 and whatnot, widely acclaimed producer. Get on to the whole other shebang that he's talking about. We're going to get into the actual article just now and read some of it. It says this: always it's been the Beatles when you talk about the greatest bands ever. That's because they are the greatest band ever. Multiple generations have been baptised, if you like, in the works of the Beatles. My young nieces are into the Beatles. One's 3, about to be 3 next month, early next month. One's 10. Already love the Beatles. I'm 34, I've been listening to the Beatles since I was a little kid, but in a more serious note, since I was about 17, 18. Stephen's a mental Beatles fan. He's coming up for 50. He'll not thank me for saying that. He's 47. Everyone knows his age. My parents are Beatles fans. My grandparents were Beatles fans. That's 4 generations, 5 generations of people who were around the Beatles and their sound, their albums, their songs. They're a multi-generational band. They're the greatest band for me. Pop band, rock band, I don't give a fuck what label, adjective you want to apply to it, that ever walked the face of the earth. What they've done has not been topped since, and I really don't think it will ever be topped, just purely because of the limitations of music and chord progressions and what you can do sonically. You just cannot go anywhere now without trodding on the sort of feet of your forefathers, people who have came before, great bands like the Beatles. And when they were so intuitive and ingenious in their approach to crafting songs, just look at Let It Be and Hey Jude. There's about fucking 700 songs minimum being produced in the years that have came and went that utilise those chord structures, and people immediately think that's Hey Jude, it's Let It Be. So it's impossible really for a modern day pop act to top the Beatles because they were so brilliant and so ahead of their time and innovative that they kind of get in there and done it, and now it's like tribute acts that are following in their footsteps. But I digress. This is what he had to say, Lillywhite. But there's an argument now that the Beatles never made anything you could play in a stadium. No, there's not. That's just absolute fucking drivel that's come out your mouth, mate. It's nonsense. The Beatles never made anything you could play at a huge sporting event. They played at Shea Stadium, 55,000 seater stadium. Paul McCartney's currently playing to 80,000 people, as I says, stadiums all over the world. Has done for decades. A lot of that's Beatles work. Obla-dee, obla-da. I've got a feeling all of the Beatles stuff, modern sort of stuff that he's put out as well, is getting played in front of capacity stadiums. I can't understand this. The Beatles never made anything you could play at a huge sporting event. He goes on to say, so Queen, when you talk about the greatest bands ever, I would never say anyone is greater than the Beatles because they aren't. And that's not an opinion, that's just a fact. But there's an argument right now that Queen, because of their ability to transcend stadiums, there's an argument that they are more relevant today than the Beatles are. In what way do you transcend stadiums, mate? Do you transcend sporting stadiums by playing in front of 100,000 people at festivals? Because that's what Paul McCartney's doing, and that's what the Beatles would have did if festivals like that existed. I think the first proper festival was Woodstock, and it was in North America. And the Beatles were already tapping out of live stuff at that point. They would have easily have filled that fucking place out if they were wanting to tour and perform at a festival like that. How do you transcend a stadium? The Beatles have transcended pop culture, mate. They are pop culture. That's why I'm into them. That's why kids are into them today. That's why fucking people in their 80s and 90s are into them. They have transcended pop culture itself. You can't. And we spoke about Queen last night. I love Queen. They're a great band. Brilliant frontman in Freddie Mercury. Brilliant guitarist and songwriter and Brian May. Just a brilliant unit in general. Produced some legendary songs. But I'm sorry, you just simply cannot put Queen in the same sentence as the Beatles when it comes to discussions about the greatest bands ever. I genuinely don't think you can put anybody, and I probably am biased because I'm a Beatles fan and I'm a favourite band. I don't think you can put any band in the conversation of greatest bands ever with the Beatles. That's just, for me, it's not a point to argue. They are the greatest, and that's it. They're GOAT tier, and then everyone else comes afterwards. There's people who came close on an individual basis, obviously the likes of Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, Bob Dylan. There's guys on an individual basis who have came pretty close to that level, but as a band, no one has came even close to what the Beatles accomplished in 10 years. Their impact on the world, their continuing impact on pop culture, their indefatigability in the terms of the plays they get from multiple generations. It's not an argument. They're not. They haven't transcended stadiums. And if they have, the Beatles have done that as well. And they're not more relevant than the Beatles today. They just aren't. Plain and simple. I don't get this argument. I'm really baffled by it. And also it goes on to talk about Parkinson dying and whatnot, covering that. Just in all in all, absolutely flabbergasted when I read the headline. I went further into the article and continued to get even more flabbergasted by the absolute nonsense this guy was spouting. They were literally the first band on the planet to play in a stadium, and they were only halfway through their tenure as a band. They get better after that. They became even more rounded individual artists, and they produced and innovated in the studio and created some of the effects that are still widely used today. It's just an utterly mental article from a guy who's been in the industry for 40 odd years, 50 years. Baffling. And this is not a slight on Queen. I've put them on the thumbnail just purely because he referenced Queen. Queen, I like Queen, but they're not the Beatles. The Beatles are more relevant than Queen. I don't think anyone would even argue that. You could say maybe the new generation, perhaps, who don't respect older music, maybe they think Queen are more relevant. I doubt it. They probably think the likes of Kendrick Lamar and Taylor Swift and Billie Eilish are more relevant than the Beatles. Maybe Harry Styles, maybe BTS, bands like that. They will probably think they're more relevant. And in a modern day sense, in terms of overall clicks on YouTube and TikTok and places like that, they probably are more relevant than the Beatles. But the Beatles, on an artistic level, on a sheerly musicianship level, on another planet to all of those acts. So yeah, and sweet of it, he's talking absolute shite. They did make things for stadiums, they played stadiums, they were the first to do it, and they're more relevant than Queen. Back in your box, mate. Moving on though to the next topic, and Zack Snyder, seen this today. Trailer release for his upcoming sci-fi epic. It's been labelled Star Wars-esque, but I didn't get that. I get Dune vibes from it, and I think that's really stemmed from his initial treatments for the movie, sort of pre-production storyboarding, actually being a Star Wars project. Initially he had Star Wars in mind for this. Of course, there was talk of Zack Snyder coming in and making a Star Wars movie. I think he pitched it to Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy. Probably the people at Disney weren't interested. Don't know why. Really don't. Because Zack Snyder's, his back catalogue's there for all to see. It's a unbelievable, once in a generation director. Real stylistic uniqueness about his movies, and I tend to like most of the movies the guys put out. They're all quite different, but they've got that same sort of stylistic darkness to them. I don't know why they knocked them back for Star Wars, but that's neither here nor there. It then obviously bred into what it is now, which is Rebel Moon. And I watched the nigh on 4-minute trailer before I came on, and it's a mixed bag for me. It does look epic. It looks as though it's tapping into all of those elements we actually liked in Star Wars before it became samey and just kept tapping back into the original trilogy and having no originality. Essentially, after Disney took over the Star Wars brand, when I say it's got elements of Star Wars as we know and love it, I'm thinking about George Lucas in the 70s and 80s and in the 90s and in 2000s, when there was these weird and wondrous aliens and weird and wondrous locations they were going to, weird and wondrous lived in elements in all of these worlds, and aliens popping up with different looks and colourful costumes and sort of outfits, if you like, for an in-world term. I'm getting that from the trailer. There is weird and wondrous looking creatures. There is sort of fantastical environments. You've got technology blending with nature. You've got a powerful narration from Tony Hopkins. You've got a stacked cast, it has to be said. Blend of youth and sort of mature heads in there. And it's got the stylistic vibes of Zack Snyder. So it's kind of what we would have got if Zack had his way and made a Star Wars movie. But as I says, it's a mixed bag for me in the sense that some of the effects, they feel Netflix-esque. They don't feel like they've quite had the care and attention, the money spent on them that would have been spent if it was a Warner Brothers or a Paramount, a Universal, a Disney who had released it straight for theatres. This feels like a streaming service movie. It's got those elements that some of those sci-fi TV shows on streaming services have, but it's at once large in its scale, but then it also feels small in scale when you start looking at the extras and you start looking at the on-location set stuff. It Mickey Mouses it for me a little bit. There's Mickey Mouse elements in there, in this trailer. And look, that's not knocking the movie. The movie as a whole, it's doing something original and different with a genre I love, sci-fi. And as I says, it does have Dune elements. It's got sort of corruption. It's got power vacuums. I feel I'm a sort of tyrannical leader. It seems to have a dense mythos in there. And we're diving right into the story. It feels in the middle. It's not the beginning and we're following it through to a natural conclusion. It's got elements of Dune. It's got elements of Lucas's Star Wars where you are going into the middle of a story. You feel like it's busy. There's something happening around you, and yeah, it's just got that vibe to it. I like the trailer, but there is issues with the trailer. And to be honest with you, looking at it and being completely authentic, I feel like this is one of those movies that's either going to be unbelievably brilliant, it's going to generate buzz and word of mouth and draw subscriber numbers up for Netflix again, or it's going to be an absolute shit show. Flop. Flippity floppity flop, as I used to say back in the day. And yeah, I don't know which one it's going to be at this moment. But I tell you what, we've not got long to wait. It's coming out 22nd of December. So as we sit here, what we're talking, 4 months, is that right? 4 months. We're in the 8th. 4 months away from its release. And some of those elements I spoke about in the trailer may still be cleaned up. This is 4 months out from release. This will not be the definitive finished version of this movie. They will be cleaning up some of the CG, cleaning up some of the shots we've seen in this trailer in post. This is the very first, I want to say teaser. They say it's a teaser. It's a trailer. It's a fucking 4-minute trailer. It's not a teaser, let's be honest. But yeah, man, certainly stylistic elements of Snyder in there. You can see it there, just the image here, man. Look how dark and brooding it is. This could easily be an Imperial officer in Star Wars coming off of an Imperial shuttle or ship, if you'd like. This could be stormtroopers. That could be the insignia of the Galactic Empire or some new-fangled fucking version of it in the future. Part of me actually wishes that the Lucasfilm had green-lit this Star Wars project, because it's a 2-parter. We get that at the end of the trailer, and it's unique and different, and look, maybe Zack could have been the guy to take us off into a completely new timeline, new location, and just do something different with the Star Wars brand. Jazz it up a bit. Get away from the Skywalker saga. Get away from the same 20-30 year period. Do something different. And if this had the sort of Star Wars IP about it, it may have, it may have enhanced it, elevated it to another level with the money Disney would have thrown at it naturally, $250 million budget. But part of me feels like the end of his tenure at Warner Brothers and what transpired with the flops and the bad blood and some of the toxicity present in the fandom that follows him on social media, that may have put Disney off greenlighting him to come in and actually oversee a new era of Star Wars. But look, this is the actual synopsis, I believe, of the movie, and as you can see, in a universe controlled by the corrupt government of the Mother World, the Moon of Velt is threatened by the forces of the Imperium and the army of the Mother World controlled by Regent Balsarius. This has got vibes of sort of Roman Empire times. Balsarius, Ignatius, Julius Caesar, Pontius Pilate. It just reeks of that sort of Roman Empire vibe. But of course, I think the army of the Mother World are the actual good guys, and traditionally when you think of the Roman Empire, you don't think of them as being good guys, you think of them as being conquerors going around. But maybe not, because they did bring civility and sort of, stuff that we actually take for granted these days probably, to, just uncivilised and backward locales. I'm looking at Britain. That's where they came. They gave us baths and viaducts, probably good cuisine. Whereas before we were probably eating, to quote a Star Wars sort of swear word, Bantha Poodoo. We were eating like shit. I digress, let's get back to this synopsis, shall we? Cora, a former member of the Imperium who seeks redemption for her past in the leadership of the oppressive government, tasks herself to recruit warriors from across the galaxy to make a stand against the Mother World's forces before they return to the planet. This just reeks of Star Wars, man. I can see in the actual synopsis why he thought this would have worked in the Star Wars galaxy, but when you actually see the implementation of it in the trailer, it's more Dune-like for me than Star Wars. Look, time will tell whether this is going to be something that's going to hit off. I'm sure Netflix, who have put a lot of faith in Zack, also they worked in Army of the Dead, I think it was. I'm pretty sure that was the name. Was it Army of the Dead? It was the heist movie anyway, the zombie movie. They signed a multi-picture deal with Zack. They put a lot of faith in him to try and produce brilliant original content. He's certainly an original voice in Hollywood, and they'll be hoping that it pays off and it does draw in eyeballs. But part of me just feels like if it is good, again, I'm going to pause that because we don't want to get done. Fucking last thing we need. Part of me just feels like this should have had a big cinematic release, and there's something missing when it goes straight to a streaming service. You lose something, man. You lose the experience. So like, for me, it just makes it a little bit, again, to quote it, Mickey Mouse when it's on a smaller screen. Just looking at the cast here, Charlie Hunnam, he's a bit of a Marmite for me. I love Charlie. He played Jax Taylor in Sons of Anarchy, but then he also played King Arthur in that Guy Ritchie King Arthur movie, and it wasn't quite there for me. Maybe not down to Charlie Hunnam's performance. He's a bit Chris Hemsworth when he comes out of Marvel. He's a mixed bag, man. I like the guy. He's a cool cat. I mean, if they're putting him over the sort of expectations, if you like, on his shoulders to carry this movie, then fuck me, we may be in trouble off the bat. Tony Hopkins is a voice. Don't know what that means. Maybe he's playing some sort of inanimate AI character. Sophia Boutella, she's another one that's been up and down. She was in that horrendous Mummy movie with Tom Cruise. Flopped hard and killed the sort of dark universe, I think it was, monster universe that Universal were planning. Corey Stoll's in there, another decent actor. You've got some familiar faces in there. Ed Skrein, he always plays a shit kicker, and you can be guaranteed he's playing a shit kicker in this. Jimon Hunsu is in there. Could he actually escape getting killed in a movie? He seems to be like, I don't know, another version of Sean Bean where he dies in every single fucking movie. Incidentally, you'd expect Sean Bean to be in there. Ray Fisher's in there. Also played Cyborg in the DCEU, the Snyderverse. So you've got some familiar faces in there. You've got some great actors in there. It does feel epic. It does feel like it's a good take on the sci-fi genre. And ultimately, time will tell whether it pays off for Zacky boy. I really do hope it does, because I'm a fan of him. As I says at the start, I like most of his movies. I like his stylistic flourishes he puts on the films. And just be really good to get a new and interesting sci-fi sort of franchise, if you like, that could go back the way, go forward, have spin-offs with interesting characters. There's a lot of scope to do something different with it. I'm sure Netflix are already thinking furiously what they can do if it is a success. But it does feel 50-50 to me, one way or another. Time will tell. Shall we move on? Now I'm going to move on to the third topic here. And this is us really going down to scraping the bottom of the barrel stuff, if I dare say it. I mean, it's not really. The last topic's quite interesting for me because it took me by surprise. I watched the trailer and I actually get more out of the trailer than I thought I would get out of it. And the actual direction they're going with that is intriguing to me, but we'll speak about that in about 5 minutes, I'm sure, once I get this out of the way. Thunderbolts. That's what I'm discussing here. And I think it's the director that's been out, Jake Schreier, and he's discussed how Thunderbolts is going to be different to any other MCU team-up. He says in sort of short-form parenthesis, I think that's the word, is it? I don't know. It's something different, Thunderbolts. Well, you would hope so. Because if you're releasing a sort of ensemble, slightly alternate take on a traditional sort of Avengers style movie, then you would hope, a Dark Avengers if you like, you'd hope it'd be different. You'd hope there'd be some originality in there and you're not just mining off stuff that's came before, because we've seen that stuff and we don't really need it again. So it's a bit of a silly statement for me, saying that yes, it's different. Yeah, I should fucking think so. You're not getting paid the big bucks, mate, to create something that's came before. That would be fucking stupid, for lack of a better word. But look, this is what he said. I think he was speaking to Screen Rant, an interview with Screen Rant about Beef and Thunderbolts. Schreier kept details about the upcoming MCU movie close to the vest. To the vest? To the chest? Never seen that before. The vest. And this is what he had to say. Full quote below, and I'm going to read it. I can't say what it is, but I can say that there is something different. And I think that again, when you look at something like Beef, there's a specificity. I can never say those words, that word. A specificity. I've never said that word in my life, you know that, when I think about it. Something like Beef, there's a specificity. I think that's how you say it, of character that makes the whole thing feel more universal. I'm not really here about Beef. That's not what I'm here to read about. I'm here to read about Thunderbolts. So can we get on to that? Schreier Yeah, fuck. Where does he speak about Thunderbolts? Thunderbolts, it's not a sequel. It's a new story. And it's a set of characters that maybe we've met a little bit in the MCU before. But this is a very new take on who they are and what brings them together. Probably not what people are expecting from it, but I guess I can't really say more than that. No, you can't, or you will be fired by the Disney machine, the House of the Mouse. Yeah, I mean, he's not really giving much away. That's why I says it's kind of bottom of the barrel stuff here. But I mean, you look at the actual lineup and you start to get an idea of what he's talking about. You get Red Guardian in there. We briefly seen him in the Black Widow movie, and he was a sort of over the hill, laughing at him most of the time kind of character. Yeah, I mean, he had a bit about him. He was a sort of Soviet version of Captain America, Steve Rogers, if you like, but he was never fully utilised in that movie, and you can respect that because it was the swan song for Natasha Romanoff, Scarlett Johansson, her tenure in the MCU, and obviously you had to introduce Yelena, played by the brilliant Florence Pugh, and they had a lot to dabble with in there. Taskmaster was in there, and that was a slightly underwhelming villain for me. Incidentally, that's also a part of this ensemble. So there was a couple. It's interesting to see we have got 3 of these sort of secondary characters from that movie who had moments but never quite got to flourish and maybe become their full, or see their full potential happen in the actual movie. Now getting a chance in a sort of Dark Avengers style. I think I'm saying Dark Avengers, it's almost the Marvel equivalent of Suicide Squad, let's be honest. You've got this ragtag bunch of anti-heroes getting together, maybe unwillingly, and having to take on an equally ragtag villain, or villains, plural. I don't know who the villain is in this movie. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle it. But when you do, you look at the actual ensemble itself, you get an idea of what he's talking about. You've got Taskmaster in there. I don't know who this other geezer is. Is that Ghost? I don't know if it is from the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, the sequel to Ant-Man, the second one, that one. You've got the sort of one that's bringing it all together. The woman, I still don't know her name. She appeared at the end of Black Widow. I think she appeared in Falcon and the Winter Soldier as well, and had a little discussion clandestine discussion at that with John Walker. Speaking of John Walker, you've got him in there. He's one I'm interested in, US Agent. I quite like that. Wyatt Russell portrayal in that TV show, one of the standout elements for me in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Certainly infinitely more interesting than the Flag Smasher villains in that. They were just fucking annoying and got in the way. This super soldier, who's a propensity for violence, he's got a darkness within him, and he's a little bit butthurt that he wasn't accepted as Captain America. He's going to have a part to play in this. It's going to be interesting to see him bouncing off of Bucky, who I think's playing the White Wolf now, isn't he? That's his new alias. Just seeing these guys bouncing off each other, they've all got kind of violence issues. They're quite angry at times. It's just going to be great to see the personalities. This is what I loved about Suicide Squad. You had different characters, some you knew more about than others, and seeing them all bouncing off each other, strange bedfellows, having to share a space together, and how that brought the best out of them, but also the worst out of them. It was just a really compelling viewing for me. Even the David Ayer movie, I think it was Ayer, had moments, had a really underwhelming villain. Obviously the fucking always blanking her name, Cara Delevingne villain, I think it was the Huntress or some shit like that. It was an underwhelming villain. The movie itself was all over the place, but it did have elements of that strange bedfellow vibe that I'm talking about. Deadshot, Harley Quinn, whoever else was in that, the fucking boomerang guy, Killer Croc, I think, was he in it? I'm pretty sure he was. I may be talking shite though. You had that element, and then also the James Gunn one, Polka Dot Man, the Weasel, fucking whoever else was in it, I'm blanking on all their names. John Cena character. You again had that strange array of different personalities, and how they were bumping off each other was bringing hilarity. It was bringing bonding, but not just the characters, but the audience to the characters. This could elevate Elaine, it could elevate Red Guardian, it could elevate Taskmaster, it could elevate Bucky even higher. John Walker. We could have everything that we're essentially, I was talking about with the Avengers movies coming up, a little in-between movie that gives us time with the characters with a non-fucking universal existential threat, a human scale threat, gives them time to bond and explore the characters before we go into these fucking wiping out humanity, wiping out half the universe sort of threats you're going to get with Kang the Conqueror. That is his name. I was getting worried there when I says that. It is the Kang Dynasty. What you're going to get in those two Avengers movies, we need this for these guys. We need it for the Avengers that are soon to be. We need an in-between kind of ensemble movie. I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's given us. I'm intrigued. I always enjoy watching Sebastian Stan. I think he's a brilliant guy, brilliant actor. I've really enjoyed his journey as James Buchanan. So I'm looking forward to that movie. Another movie I'm looking forward to, though, and I'm going to end the show on this, incredibly, is the Marvels. Now, I'm still not in with this whole Kree Skrull bollocks. I've not seen Secret Invasion, and I've got no intentions of seeing Secret Invasion. I'm going to stress that right now. But the three characters in the trailer intrigued me. But what intrigued me more, and I'll get into the villain, this is just a conduit to me for me to discuss the actual trailer and how actually blown away I was by it. First and foremost, Brie Larson looks pretty fucking good as Captain Marvel. Both aesthetically, she's worked hard to get into shape. Hopefully she's not using a sort of a booty implant in this one. But also, she looks good as a leader. The interactions we see, they look interesting, they look quite funny at times, they look quite serious at times when they need to be. The vibes of the trailer were good for me. And this is a movie I'm flip-flopping on every time I see it and discuss it. But what DaCosta's doing, and I hope I've not picked up on this wrong from the trailer, but I really enjoyed the almost Jumanji fucking vibes we were getting, where the powers are being dabbled with. When Carol Danvers uses her power, it affects the what's she called? Monica Rambeau character. It affects the Kamala Khan, I want to say. I always think of Kamala Harris when I say that. Kamala Harris being the Vice President of the United States of America. I'm pretty damn fucking sure. I'm going to search that up. Kamala Harris. Is she? I've just realised I can't. Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States of America. Kamala Khan. When they were using their different powers, it was impacting each other. That's the vibes I got from it. Something had happened, they'd interacted, Carol Danvers had interacted with the villain of the movie in the trailer, and they were explaining how when you use your power it impacts me, I've then got your power, then when I use that it impacts her. Just tangling them up, bring them together, and then they have to work with each other. It's almost like handcuffing two people together and trying to get them to get out of some sticky situation. I liked the vibes, the way they were mixing it up. That's something I enjoyed about those Jumanji movies from Sony, the way the characters were getting thrust into different environments, different bodies, if you like. That's not what's happening in this movie, but the powers, doing something different with the powers. I found it really fucking interesting. The way that they actually presented that in the trailer. That's unique. That's different. That's something we need to see in these movies. We need to see some originality. We need to see good self-contained storytelling as well. Just don't worry about interconnecting everything and fucking building up to the Avengers movies. I know you have to do it. You've got plans laid out. But I fundamentally believe that the MCU has to get back to doing what it did best 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Delivering brilliant self-contained standalone movies which just so happen to connect into the greater story. That's what we need. And I've got full confidence in DaCosta to deliver that with this movie, I have to say. And again, this is almost the fucking living embodiment of the opposite of what I'm saying, in the sense that you've got WandaVision, you've got Miss Marvel, you've got Carol Danvers, and it's all interconnecting in one movie. It's almost like a mini ensemble movie. But I liked the vibes from the trailer, man. The cat was back with Nick Fury in there. I did like the vibes, and I tell you, I'm not going to whitewash history and start saying I fucking hated Miss Captain Marvel, the first one. I actually quite liked it. I didn't think it was an outstanding movie, but it was quite funny. I liked the 90s setting. I liked the movie. There was elements I didn't like, but overall I thought it was a decent Marvel movie. It was mid. It was a mid-Marvel movie. And I'm not going to back down from that position. So, I mean, what I'm saying is that I think there's a chance I might like this fucking Marvels movie. I think there's a chance. And having watched Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I have to tell you, that was a very, very, very good fucking movie. But again, that was almost like a pocket universe wasn't it? With the Guardians doing their own thing. But Nia's been out, and she's had this to say in regards to the comic narrative and how there will be traces of it serving as a foundation for the villain. I didn't get a huge amount about Dar-Benn, I'm not going to lie, from the trailer. She looked cool. Seemed to be utilising energy some way. I can't sit here and lie and say I know much about the character. It must have a degree of powerfulness though if it's taking on Monica Rambeau, Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, and obviously Carol Danvers, because they are three pretty powerful characters in their own right. And this is what she had to say. Maybe I'll get a little lesson here because I've not read this quote yet. I like to keep it fresh for the show, or the stream, or the podcast, whatever way you want to call it. I don't know. This is what she had to say. I would just smoothly say not very. What is this? I need to read this English again because it actually hurt my brain there. I'm sure it came out her mouth much better than I've read it. Let's try that again. I would just smoothly say not very, minus their viewpoint on the Kree and the Kree's positioning in the universe. That's the only thing that puts me off, this Kree box. I'm just not invested in it at all. I know it started in Captain Marvel, but I'll get into it in a moment. This is my reservations for this MCU moving forward and why it's a problem for me. I'll get into it. We were inspired by the period of two empires, and there was some more of that story in the first versions of the script. But as we took over and moved into our own space and what this story was, more of that shed away. But in terms of energetically being a Kree imperialist, she's similar. So she's a Kree. They're not completely utilising the foundational sort of mythology, if you'd like, narrative from the comics. They're going off and doing something unique with this character. They're changing it up. And look, that's fine. I've always maintained, what the fuck have I just done? I'm going to move that back there because I've just rearranged it slightly. I've always maintained that the comic serves a great foundation for you to mine out of. There's some brilliant storytelling going back multiple decades, and it's important you remain faithful to that in some level. You've got to give the hardcore comic fandom their little moment. You've got to give some little fan service moments in there, but ultimately you can't be chained to the comics. You have to deliver a unique and new story with this character or characters. And you should be given freedom of expression and the ability to adapt to your specific movie in this case. So I've got no issues with her diverging from the canon. It's not a film that I particularly care for all that much. Ultimately, it is going to serve as canon fodder for these three characters. And again, I spoke about Thunderbolts. You're almost getting these three characters who are sure to pop up in these Avengers movies. Getting a trial run together. Getting time to spend some moments together, bond with not just themselves in the universe, but with the audience watching the film. And this is what we need, man. We need more times together with these characters before we get into the big existential conflicts, because if you don't care for the characters, you don't care for their personalities, you don't care for them as an audience member, then you're not going to care when it comes to life or death moments and the conclusive parts of the sagas that you are constructing. We cared so much for Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther. We cared so much for Steve Rogers' Captain America. We cared so much for Tony Stark. We cared so much for those era of Marvel characters, for Loki to an extent as well, the Hulk, Hawkeye. We cared for these characters, Doctor Strange. So because we'd bonded with them over multiple movies, ensemble movies, standalone movies, they were coming out of each other's stories. So when you got to Infinity War, you got to Endgame, and some of them were fucking biting the bullet temporarily, some permanently, and also in Natasha Romanoff's case, it had a real emotive impact on you, an emotional effect on you watching it. I always remember Black Panther fading away into dust, and I was actually shocked. I remember the moment with Peter Parker. I was shocked. That's the importance of bonding with characters, spending time with them, having those moments before these big fucking conclusive stories take place. And they're doing that with the Marvels, so fair play to them. I was going to reference something, and I'm going to end on this really. There is one downside to the way they are constructing these stories just now. The whole Kree stuff, they did start that with Captain Marvel. They're continuing it in the sequel, as you should, because it only makes sense terms of continuity, that you continue that story. But my big concern is me being a person who hasn't watched Secret Invasion, just how much I'm going to be missing getting into a sequel. Is there stuff that's specifically being explored in Secret Invasion that they're not going to hold your hand with in the second Captain Marvel movie, The Marvels? Am I missing out on things? Because I feel like that's a big issue for this current era of Marvel storytelling. We are exploring things in TV shows and they're not going to hold your hand. New audiences coming in who have not watched those projects are going to be a bit lost at times with some of the references. Feige, to be fair to him, did say if you want to be fully in with what's happening with this universe, you have to watch all the projects. But that's all well and good when they're really good. But when you're serving up some shit fucking TV shows, and let's be honest, they have served some shit up, that discourages and puts people off from watching some of the other stuff, and it could be good stuff. We've seen that with Star Wars. You get one bad thing and it puts people off watching absolute brilliance like Andor. Then they're waking up to it maybe a little bit later. But in this case, we're not getting an Andor fucking movie. We're not getting a Star Wars movie that's following on from Andor. You're not missing out on anything. With Marvel, these are all weaving into a greater story. So that's my one concern about going into this movie. Am I going to be going in blind with some elements of this movie, with the story, with the Kree Skrull shit? And is that a greater problem for Marvel? Should they be doing more to sort of encourage a multi-demographic understanding of their movies? People who have not watched the TV shows, I feel they should. They need to tread carefully with that. It's all well and good making TV shows and saying you need to watch it all. Most people maybe watch it all, but there is still going to be a sizable fucking demographic out there who will not watch the movies or not watch the TV shows and they'll go in blind to movies. You need to look out for them as well. But I digress. I'm going to round it up, man. I've been speaking for nearly 50 minutes. Over 50 minutes. With the song, it's no less than 50 minutes. The intro. What was your thoughts on the topics I touched upon in the show tonight? Do you agree with Steve Lillywhite that Queen are now more relevant than the Beatles? That they have transcended stadiums? Do you agree with him that the Beatles never produced anything relevant for stadiums? I completely disagree with the guy. I think he's talking absolute codswallop pish. He's an absolute clown for even exposing such drivel into the actual universe, views into the universe. He's completely wrong. The Beatles are the greatest band of all time. They're not even in the same conversation as Queen, and they literally fucking sold out stadiums in the 60s. Shout your thoughts down below about that. Shout your thoughts about Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon movie. The trailer dropped. Do you think it's going to be a success, a flop? Do you agree with me? Elements are a bit Mickey Mouse. It feels a bit sort of, I don't know, B-list TV show. The effects, the location, some of the outfits. It just feels a little bit off to me. Share your thoughts down below about it. Share your thoughts about Thunderbolts going to potentially be something different from what we've seen before. You would fucking hope so, with it being a new movie. He's going to explore these sort of strange bedfellows in a different way. Thoughts on the Marvels sort of deviating from the foundational canon for the villain. And the Marvels in general, what's your thoughts on the movie? You're looking forward to it? Anything you feel compelled to share can be put down below in the comment section. That's the place to put your thoughts. Like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notifications straight to your eyeballs. Do the same thing over on Twitch. Follow button, notifications button over there, it says there. Hit the follow button, like the episode on Spotify, if it's even going on Spotify. I don't know if we're keeping this podcast thing for just me and Steven and when we do episodes together, because I feel like that would probably flow better than just me waffling fucking shite for like 50 minutes on my lonesome. But if it's going on then, and you're hearing this on Spotify, maybe a very niche audience, nicher than niche, give it a follow and like us over there as well. All that's left to be said is thank you for watching me, and until the next time, I am done. Bye bye. FF lover, mate, I'm very sorry I didn't see your comments, mate. I had it on the wrong screen. I thought I had the chat up on Restream. Didn't see your comments, mate. I'm very sorry. But belated hi and bolo, whatever that means. Cha-cha.